Hello, welcome back. We are going to continue reading the novel Lord of the Mysteries by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. Last time we read chapters 49 to 51. What happened? We learned a bit about the magic mirror divination from Vincent, and now we are learning the ritualistic magic, I think, from Old Neil. Where we went to Neil's house and tried to do the ritualistic magic for his debt. He is 30 pounds debt. Okay, so let's start with chapter 52, Spectator. Stop thinking about the bloody IOU. Let's discuss the ritualistic magic. Old Neil put away the candles, cauldron, and silver knife, and the other items with a relaxed expression. Client really wanted to shrug his shoulders like the Americans in his previous life, but ultimately could not bring himself to do something ungentlemanly. He turned his focus towards the ritualistic magic and threw out detailed questions that had puzzled him, receiving answers for them. For example, the incantation had a particular format. As long as they were satisfied and the key meaning was expressed in Hermes, the rest could be left to one's creativity. Of course, blasphemy and disrespectful descriptions were absolutely forbidden. The mysticism class lasted until noon before old Neil coughed twice. We have to return to Zotland Street. With that said, he grumbled in an indistinct manner. To get these bloody materials, I missed my beloved breakfast. Klein looked around both amused and puzzled. Mr. Neil, do you have a chef or a maidservant in charge of cooking? A weekly salary of £12 could hire several servants. According to the newspapers, with board and lodging provided, hiring an ordinary chef cost anywhere between 12 to 15 soldi a week. It did not even need a pound. A maidservant to do miscellaneous chores was even cheaper. Their weekly salaries ranged between 3 soli 6 pence to 6 soli. Of course, one could not bear any hope of them having any culinary skills. That's not right. With Mr. Neil's debt of £30, it's only normal he doesn't hire any chefs or servants. It seemed I have asked another question I should not have asked. While Klein regretted his question, old Neil shook his head without minding it. I often attempt ritualistic magic, research extraordinary items, and read corresponding documents at home. So I don't, nor is it possible that I hire ordinary people as chefs, valets, or maidservants. I only hire someone to clean up the place regularly. And if they are not ordinary people, do you think they'll be willing to do such jobs? I seem to have asked a silly question. It's possible because I will not do anything that involves mysticism at home, explained Clan in a self deprecating manner. Old Neil had long stood up, wore his round felt hat, and while walking out the door, he rambled on. I seem to smell pan fried foie gras. Once the IOU is completely settled, I'll definitely have one set. For lunch, I will definitely eat roasted pork glazed with apple juices. No, that's not enough. I must have a sausage infused with mashed potatoes. You're making me hungry. Man swallowed his saliva as he caught up to old Neil and headed for the nearby carriage stop. While returning to Zotland Street, old Neil suddenly grunted after stepping down the carriage. What do I see? Goddess, what am I seeing? He was suddenly as nimble as a 17 or 18-year-old lad. He quickly came to the roadside and picked up an item. Clyde leaned close out of curiosity and looked carefully. He realized it was a wallet with fine workmanship. With his lack of experience, he could barely tell if the dark brown wallet was made of buffalo skin or sheepskin. But he noticed a small light blue logo embroidered on the side of the wallet, a white dove spreading its wing as if ready to take off. This was Clan's first impression. Second thing he noticed was The stack of paper notes in the bulging wallet. There were more than 20 grey notes, imprinted with black ink, gold pounds. Old Neil opened up the wallet and pulled out the notes. When he looked at it carefully, he immediately chuckled. 10-pound notes. The Honorable Founder and Protector William the First. Wow, goddess, there's total of 30 notes. There's also a few 5-pound notes, 1 pound, and 5 soldi notes. More than 300 pounds? That's a huge sum of money in every meaning of the word. I might not even earn that much in 10 years. Flan's breathing turned heavy involuntarily. As the amount of gold pounds was immense, picking up such a wallet was equivalent to picking up a briefcase of banknotes in his previous life. I wonder which gentleman dropped it. He can't be someone ordinary, analyzed Klein calmly. Such a wallet was clearly not a woman's. There's no need to care who he is, said old Neil with a chuckle. It's not like we attempted to divine and take money that doesn't belong to us. We should wait here for a moment. I believe that the gentleman will soon be back searching for it. It's not something that can be given up no matter who it is. Klein heaved a sigh of relief. He had a brand new understanding of old Neil's morals. He was rather worried that he would have used the goddess's bestowment as an excuse and paid off his debt. He was still wondering how to prevent it and persuade him otherwise. Is this do as you wish, but do no harm? Clan suddenly learned something new. The duo did not wait more than a minute by the streets when a luxurious four-wheeled carriage zoomed over. Its side had a light blue logo with a dove spreading its wings. The carriage stopped and a middle-aged man dressed in a black formal suit with a bow tie of the same color alighted. He looked at the wallet, took off his hat, and said politely, Sirs, that should be my master's wallet. Your logo is proof of everything, but I need to make additional verification. This is to be responsible for all parties. May I ask how much money is there in the wallet? Asked old Neil politely. The middle aged man was taken aback as he said in a self deprecating manner almost immediately. As a butler, I do not know how much money Master had in his wallet. Sorry, please permit me to ask. As you wish, old Neil gestured for him to do as he pleased. The middle aged man walked to the carriage's side and through the window conversed with a person within. He approached Klein and old Neil again and smiled. More than 300 pounds, but less than 350. My master does not remember the exact number. Does not remember? That's really some filthy rich guy. If I had that much money on me, I would definitely be counting it again and again. Klein was filled with envy. Old Neil nodded and handed the wallet back. With the goddess as proof, this belongs to you. The middle aged man took the wallet over and did an estimate before pulling out 3-pound notes. My master is Sir Deweyville. He wishes to commend your morals. That is what an honest person should receive. Please do not reject it. Sir Deweyville, the one who established the Deweyville Trust, the Sir Deweyville who provided cheap rental apartments to the working class. Klein immediately remembered the name. He was a knight that his brother respected but did not believe was grounded in reality. Thank you, Sir Deweyville. He is a kind and generous gentleman. Old Neil did not stand on ceremony as he received the 3 notes. After watching Sir Deweyville's carriage depart, he turned to look at Klein when he saw there was no one around. He flicked the notes and chuckled. 30 pounds. The IOU is settled. I said, I said it will be settled in a reasonable manner. This is the power of magic. Holy fucking power of magic. That actually works? Klein was once again flabbergasted. A few minutes later, he entered the building stairwell and while heading to the security company, he asked puzzledly, Mr. Neil, why didn't you ask for more money? Do not be greedy. One must take care not to be greedy while doing ritualistic magic. Temperance is a critical trait needed by every mystery prior if they wish to live long, explained old Neil happily. In a huge ballroom, candles were burning on a few chandeliers, emitting a fragrance that soothed the minds of people. By the sheer number of candles they produced, a high light, no matter in a way, in by the sheer number of candles they produced a light in no way inferior to that of gas lamps. There were long tables with pan-fried foie gras, grilled steak, roasted chicken, fried tonguefish, desi oysters, mutton stew, cream soup, and other delicacies. In addition, there were bottles of mist champagne, Ormer, Ormer, grape wine, and Southwell red wine. They were all glistening with tempting glow under the light. Servants with red vests carried trays with crystal cups and shuttled between gentlemen and ladies dressed both elegantly and gorgeously. Audrey Hall was wearing a collared, high-waisted, pale white dress with engagements. Engagements? Engagements, okay. The corset was tightly fitted while her voluminous layers were puffed up perfectly with a crage crinoline. The long blonde hair was coiled up in an elegant bun, and the earrings, necklace, and rings she wore sparkled brightly. At her feet were a pair of white dancing shoes that were stitched with roses and diamonds. There were how many petticoats am I wearing? Five, six? Wearing wearing white silk gloves. Audrey caressed her crinoline gently with her right hand. Her left hand was holding a glass of clear champagne. Audrey was nothing like her usual self, usually placing herself center of banquets and making her the focus of attention. Instead, she avoided the bustle and quietly stood in the shadows of hanging curtains by the French windows. She took the sip of champagne as she watched the crowd as though she did not belong. Earl Wolf's youngest son is chatting with Viscount Conrad's daughter. He likes to move his forearm to reinforce that what he says. The bigger the movement of his forearm, the more unbelievable his words. That is something gleaned from experience. He can't stop trying to elevate himself by putting other people down. However, he can't help but feel guilty. It can be seen by the way he talks and his body language. Duchess Della had repeatedly covered her mouth while laughing with her left hand today. Ah, I see. She's showing off her pure ocean blue sapphire. Her husband, Duke Negan, is discussing the current situation with few conservative nobles. Since the banquet began, he has searched for Duchess Stella once. They almost never make eye contact. Maybe they aren't as in love as they pretend to be. Baron Larry has made Madame Barnes laugh 7 times. That's very normal, nothing strange about it. But why does she look at her husband with guilty eyes? Oh, have they gone their separate ways? That's not right. The direction they are headed leads to the garden. In an extravagant banquet, Audrey saw many details she never noticed in the past. There was an instance where she nearly believed she was watching an opera. Everyone is a good opera actor. She sighed silently as her eyes remained limpid. At that moment, she suddenly sensed something and turned her head. She cast her gaze onto the dark corner in the large balcony outside. In the shadows was the huge golden retriever sitting there silently. She was looking inside at Audrey while half her body was hidden in the darkness. Susie? The corners of Audrey's mouth twitched as her expression changed instantly. She could no longer maintain her state as a spectator. Chapter 53. Listener. An ancient three-masted sailboat was navigating through a tumultuous storm and sea. It was not fast, and its displacement was lacking. With the weather and sea looking like a cataclysmic scene, the sailboat was like a weathered leaf separated from its tree. However, regardless of how the typhoons rampaged or how terrifying the waves were, it continued sailing peacefully without any signs of tilting. Alja Wilson stood on the empty deck as he looked at the massive waves that resembled mountains. His thoughts were a mystery. It's going to be Monday again, he muttered silently to himself. It was the day belonging to Earth Mother, the beginning of a series of waxing and waning. However, it meant something different to Alger. It belonged to the mysterious existence forever enveloped in grayish white fog. At least I haven't been reduced to a madman. He stopped looking around as he gave a self-deprecating chuckle. At this moment, one of the only few sailors he had leaned over had le- at that at this moment, one of the only few sailors he had leaned over and asked reverently, "My lord, where are we setting course for this time?" Alger surveyed his surroundings and said in a calm voice, "Pursue the listener from Aurora Order." The storm subsided as mist emanated. On a strange sailboat with cannons on board, an 8 or 9-year-old boy with soft yellow hair was looking at pirates around him in fear. They were disorderly. Some enjoyed barrels of beer, while some swung around with ropes. Others mocked each other, and some even fought with their fists. Turned around. He turned to look at black-robed man standing in the shadows. He suppressed his voice and asked, "Father, where are we going?" 5 days ago was his first time seeing his father, a father who proclaimed to be an adventurer. If not for the oil painting his late mother left him that confirmed his father's identity, and the fact that the orphanage had opened its doors to him, he was absolutely unwilling to leave his hometown and follow his only kin, who was also nearly a stranger. The man in the shadows lowered his head and looked at his son. With an amiable expression, he answered, "Jack, I'm bringing you to a holy place, a holy residence where the Creator once lived." "Is that the kingdom of God? We mortals can only enter by winning His grace." Jack had been well educated by his mother and knew this much. He was both surprised and fearful about the matter. Standing in the shadows, the man had an unforgettable jawline as though he was a sculpture chiseled by the best artisan. He placed his hand to his ear and made a listening pose. He replied in a tone that sounded like sleep talking. "Jack, mortals are a wrong concept. The Creator created this world and He is everywhere. He exists in every living being. Therefore, all beings have godhood. Once the godhood attains a particular level, they can become an angel. The seven fake gods at present are only powerful angels. Look, I can now hear the teachings of the Creator. Ah, how extraordinary is this revelation! Life was only a tour of the spirit. When the spirit is sufficiently potent and resilient, we can find our godhood and fuse with even more godhoods." Jack could not understand the complicated description. He shook his head and asked another question he previously did not have the chance to. "Father, I heard from Mother that the Creator created this world. He split into all beings and does not exist in actuality. Then why does his holy resident exist?" As a 7 or 8 year child, he was logical. The man with the chiseled face was taken aback. He turned his head away as though he was listening to more murmurings. Suddenly, he slumped down, knees on the deck. His exposed skin protruded black shards. He clenched his head with both hands as his expression warped and he shouted in extreme pain, "They are lying." After lunch, having had old Neil promise him that he would bring him to the underground market next time he went, Klein slowly returned to the Blackthorn Security Company. He chose two options of reading the documents in the staff office and practicing his abilities or take opportunity to go out and act as a seer in the divination club before Captain Dunsmore stopped him. However, before he could make the decision, Dunsmith walked in. He was dressed in his usual black trench coat, half top hat. Captain, any updates? Plan thought of the whereabouts of the Antigonus family's notebook as he asked with concern. Without showing any signs of fatigue in his gray eyes, Dunn said, "The facts have corroborated that the Antigonus family's notebook is in Ray Weber's hands. However, he has vanished completely. I've already informed the various Nighthawk teams of this matter through a telegram. They were requested to pay attention to various piers and steam locomotive stations. The first batch of printed portraits was mailed out yesterday afternoon and will be printed in various major newspapers. How nice would it be if there were phones, fax machines, surveillance cameras, and big data? What a pity. I know how to use all of them and even understand a little of the logic behind it." Clients exhaled silently. But regardless, we can consider ourselves as having found the notebook. And this is all thanks to you. Of course, it still needs another round of confirmations. I've already sent a telegram to the Backland Diocese requesting them to escort the sealed artifact 2-049 here. It was once a dangerous item of the Antigonus family. It can help us to know if Ray Bieber is the descendant of Antigonus family. A grade 2 sealed artifact? Dangerous? They can be used with care and moderation. Klein had originally wanted to ask about the sealed artifact, its special abilities, and the danger it posed out of curiosity. But he instantly recalled he lacked the necessary clearance. He had no choice but to give up. May Goddess bless us. Klein tapped more spots on his chest, forming the sign of the full moon. Then pushed open the door to his office and said with a slight nod, "The goddess has always been protecting us. Lion, if you had not chosen Seer, you would be a formal member after this matter is verified. You could have chosen Sleepless. But pity. To be frank, I'm still puzzled over your choice. Although Corpse Collector is quite off-putting, you have seen daily as well. You should know that the spirit mediums vary in strength. As for the Mr. Priors, they are a good choice too. At the very least, you have old Neil as a role model. So he will make sure the risk of losing control is minimized. With regards to this question, client had prepared an answer from the beginning. He had just never had a chance to use it, since Dunn did not ask. He was only able to answer in passing. He organized his words and said, "My considerations stem from the fact that seers and mystery priors are considered beyond us with a support role. They do not need to always face enemies, for that's too dangerous. And both you and Old Neil said that in the domain of mystery and beyond us, curiosity and experimentation usually brings about terrifying outcomes. Describing mystery priors as prying mysteries made me worried. So, as you know, I was only an ordinary graduate not long ago. Lack of guts is the only reason I made such a choice. I have to say, this is a very reasonable answer that goes beyond my expectations." Dunn massaged his temples and chuckled. He turned halfway as his gray eyes sized up Klein. "Continue going out for now. Do not limit yourself to the paths leading from Welch's Place to Iron Cross Street. Perhaps you might have sensed the notebook and help us confirm Ray Weaver's location." All right. Client realized he no longer need to be in a dilemma. He bed, he bade Dunn farewell and turned around, his heart beginning to count. 3, 2, hold down, shouted Dunn. Client turned his head and smiled. "Captain, is there anything else?" Dunn puffed slightly and said, "Well, support beyond us have to fight their enemies from time to time. Although seers sound like they can avoid such battles, they are not to be ignored. You have to maintain your shooting skills and work on increasing your strength." "This is what I'm working hard towards," Klein pointed outside. "I'll be leaving." "All right. Wait a moment." Dunn shouted for him once more. As he pondered, he said, "Perhaps I have to consider hiring a combat trainer for you. Of course, this matter is under the premise that you become a formal member." Client responded tersely before asking carefully, Captain, is there anything else? No. Seeing Client's unbelieving eyes, then shook his head and smiled. He emphasized again. Really, nothing. Only then did Client walk past the partition divider. He bade farewell to Roseanne and Mrs. Oriana and headed to the shooting club for practice. With all of this done, he went to the divination club and saw the beautiful Angelica sitting there reading magazines leisurely. Oh, Client silently read. With a cane in hand, he walked over and greeted with a smile. Good afternoon, Madam Angelica. Good afternoon, Mr. Moriarty. In no rush, Angelica put down her magazine. She stood up and said, Not long after you left yesterday, Mr. Glacis came. He just recovered from a major illness. Clan heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. That sure is something worth celebrating. Upon hearing this, Angelica, who was secretly observing him, lowered her voice and asked out of curiosity. Mr. Glacis said that you have a very, very, very magical doctor. Are you? What? Klein looked at the lady in front of him, suspecting if he was hearing things. What made him think I'm a doctor? Even I do not know. Chapter 54. The first divination requester. Upon seeing Klein's odd expression, Angelica immediately felt her beliefs waver. Is that so? Mr. Glacis mentioned that you were able to tell of an ailment in his lungs simply from observation. Her voice softened until she finally shut up. Observation? A dark glabella? Klein was instantly enlightened as he shook his head in a chortle. I believe Mr. Glacis was mistaken. He was planning on being pre-functionary, but after recalling that no one sought his divination services the entire afternoon yesterday, his mind whirled. It affected his goal of acting as a seer, so he explained, it's a form of divination. Divination? But Mr. Glacis only mentioned that you observed his face. That's also considered divination? Asked Angelica in shock and doubt. Clan smiled, composed. As a member of divination club, you should know about palm reading, right? Palm reading was not patented by the Fudolic Empire. Even on Earth, India and old Europe had developed similar principles, much less in the world of beyonder with powers. I know about it, but it seemed you did not read his palm. Were you observing him in secret? Asked Angelica curiously. I was using face reading. Klein cooked up a lie. Its principles are different from palm reading at a fundamental level. Really? Angelica's eyes were filled with disbelief. In order to develop his career as a seer, Klein chuckled. He pretended to be in thought as he tapped his glabella twice. He focused his eyes and Angelica's aura presented itself. Her head was purple, her limbs were red, her throat was blue. There is no problem with her health except from some colors being duller. However, that was from manifestation of ordinary fatigue. Then looked at her emotions and saw orange mixed with some red and blue. This also meant warmth coupled with some excitement and thought. Thankfully, after realizing that there was nothing abnormal about her, Klein planned on deactivating his spirit vision. But it was as that but it was at that moment he suddenly saw rich darkness hidden in the depth of her emotional colors. Furthermore, she is lacking a little of white and eagerness to improve. Klein nodded with a thought. Mr. Moderaty, were you reading my face? Seeing the young gentleman in front of her turn silent abruptly while seriously sizing her up, Angelica keenly noticed something. She asked in a half curious and half worried manner. Klein did not immediately reply. Instead, he tapped his glabella lightly as he wore a look of scrutiny. Just as Angelica was feeling unease, he warmly said, Madam Angelica, there's some sorrows and pains which you should not seal in your heart. Angelica's eyes widened as her mouth turned agape. However, she did not say a word. She looked at Klein in his half-top hat with apparent scholarly being. She heard him use deep, comforting, and warm voice to say, You need to either go mountain climbing, a game of tennis, or perform a tragic play to exhaust your body due to exercising. Let your tears flow unhib- uninhibited, then cry and scream. Express all those emotions. That will be very helpful to your health. The moment those words entered her ears, Angelica felt she had transformed into a statue. She stood there motionless. She tried hard to blink as she lowered her head in a fluster, saying deeply, "Thank you for your suggestions." It seemed there were many members here today. Client did not continue. As though he had not done any divinations prior, he turned to his side and looked at the meeting room on the end of the meeting room at the end of the corridor. Sunday afternoon, at least 50 members. Angelica's voice sounded a little hoarse. She only mentioned the key terms. She paused as her vocal pace gradually returned to normal. "Do you want tea or coffee?" Sibe black tea. Sip black tea. Clan nodded slightly. He politely took off his hat and slowly walked to the meeting room. Only when he vanished behind the door did Angelica exhale slowly. The division club's meeting room was very large. It was nearly twice the size of Client's high school classroom. In the past, only 5 or 6 members would be present, making it look extremely empty. Now there were dozens of fortune tellers sitting in different spots. They filled up most of the room. Sunlight shone into the room through the few oriel windows. The members were either discussing softly among themselves or asking Hannah's Vincent questions. Otherwise, they were practicing and attempting divination or drinking coffee and reading newspapers by themselves. Such a scene made Clive feel like he was back to his schooling days on Earth. The difference was that it was noisier and more rowdy back then, without the tranquility of the meeting room. He looked around but didn't see familiar faces like Glacis or Edward Steve. So he casually picked up a divination textbook, found a corner, and started flipping through it leisurely. Very soon, Angelica came in with a cup of tea and left it on the table before Clive. As she was leaving quietly, she suddenly saw Mr. Moretti take out an exquisite looking silver chain from his left sleeves. There was a chunk of pure topaz hanging on the silver chain. What is he doing? Angelica slowed down subconsciously and focused her gaze on Clive. Clive held the silver chain in his left hand, allowed the topaz to hang above the seaway black tea, just short of touching the surface of the liquid. With with a serene expression, he half closed his eyes and the atmosphere around him suddenly turned quiet. The topaz started moving slightly along with a special looking silver chain in a clockwise direction. Upon seeing this, Angelica found Mr. Moretti extremely mysterious. "The black tea you provided is great," Lance said softly after he opened his eyes with a smile. His action when intentionally done for Angelica to see. If he wanted people to select him for his divination services, Angelica's recommendation was very crucial factor. Since he wanted to act as a seer, Klein no longer had any reservations. He completely personified the identity. "Yes, Mr. Vanus is very picky about the quality of tea," Angelica said, stunned. Klein put away his spirit pendulum by winding it properly. He then raised a white porcelain cup with floral design. With a smile, he gestured politely at her with his cup. Angelica returned to the reception hall, but she no longer had the mood to read magazines. She sat there gazing into the distance. It was a wonder what she was thinking about. This continued until there were knocks on the door. She jolted awake and hurriedly looked at the entrance, only to see a lady dressed in light blue dress. The lady took off her wheel hat and a powder with a powder blue ribbon. She looked calm and melancholic. Good afternoon, esteemed lady. Would you like to join divination club, or are you looking for a divination? Angelica asked like clockwork. "I want a divination." The lady had a beautiful pair of eyes hidden with sorrow, and she bit her lower lip as she spoke. Angelica guided her to the sofa and explained to her how the divination club worked in detail. She picked up an album and handed it over. You can pick anyone. In her low spirits, the lady flipped through the album seriously. As there were too many club members here that day, there were too many choices. It left her quite upset. Can you recommend one from these few pages? She pointed at the middle section of the album, omitting the fortune tellers priced above 2 soldi and those below 4 pence. Angelica took the album, looked at it a few times, and said she deliberated her words and before saying, I suggest this gentleman. The lady looked uneasy. The lady who looked uneasy took a glance and realized that it was a fortune teller named Clan Moretti. Is Mr. Moretti just joined the club? Is his divination reliable? She asked worriedly. Angelica nodded with a great affirmation. Another member of the club and I are certain that Mr. Moretti is an outstanding fortune teller. If it wasn't for his just joining the club, he wouldn't take such low fees. I understand. The depressed girl nodded. I'll pick Mr. Moretti for a divination then. All right, please hold on for a second. Angelica took the album and walked towards the meeting. She came next to Klein and said with a suppressed voice, Mr. Moretti, someone wants you to divine for them. Which room would you like to use? That was effective. My first business is here. Klein put down his teacup and nodded calmly as he said Topaz room. All right. Angelica walked slowly ahead of him and led him to a Topaz room before opening its wooden door. Klein sat behind a table that had various divination tools on it. He waited less than a minute before he saw a woman in light blue dress walk in. She looked down and melancholic. Seizing the opportunity while she was closing the door, he tapped his glabella twice. The yellow color in her stomach seemed a little dull. Dark colors of her emotions is very heavy, mainly worry and anxiety. Klein looked at her over carefully and leaned backwards. He then lifted his hand to cut off his spiritual vision. Whoa. Cut off his spiritual vision. Good day, Mr. Moretti. The woman in light blue dress sat down. Good afternoon. How may I address you? Klein asked politely, not carrying much hope of getting an answer. As a keyboard warrior, he knew many people were not willing to use their real name during divination. You can call me Anna. The girl put her veiled cap aside. She looked at Klein with mixed anticipation and doubt and said, I would like to divine about my fiance's situation. He traveled to the continent in March for a business deal. He sent me and his family a telegram last month on the 3rd saying that he was going to set sail and return, but he did not return after 20 days. At first, I believed that his delay was due to the berserk seas weather, but as of today, it has been more than a month. The ship he took, Alfalfa, still hasn't arrived at Enmat Harbor. The ocean that separated the northern and southern continent was called the Berserk Sea. It was well known for natural calamities and countless dangerous currents. If it was not for the emperor, if it was not for Emperor Roselle, who sent men to discover few safer sailing routes, countries in the northern continent would still have yet to enter the age of colonization, let alone lay an underwater cable to complete a transoceanic telegraph. Client looked at his very first client of his Client looked at his very first client of his career as a seer and asked carefully, which divination method do you wish to use? All right, I think we will stop here for today. Chapter 54. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Have a nice day. Bye bye.